I was on the receiving end of a hunting. And just got dominated on the opener. I'm just like, football sucks. I want it over with now.
The most dangerous game, dude. You were getting hunted.
Wrecked.
You're listening to Let's Talk Fantasy Football, where men of fantasy genius have realized, hey guys, we don't need real football skills to dominate on the fantasy field. Yeah. So slap on your pads and grab your helmet. Shit's about to get real.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Let's Talk Fantasy Football. I'm your host tonight. My name is Nick Walsh. I'm here with my good friend, my co-host. I am here with Vinny Gonzalez. Vinny, what's going on, dude?
Hello, Walsh. Hello, everybody. Yay, football.
Yeah, football's here, man. It's there was a lot of it. It was a lot of fun, honestly. Well, so Sunday itself, not great.
The Monday, 1 o'clock's made me sad as hell.
Yeah. I just watched the Raiders have like a convincing win, so I was fine with that.
Right.
But Sunday in itself, not great. I don't think any of the like Green Bay, Seattle, that was like whatever. Dallas, New York, that was whatever. Monday night, dude, the closer of the week, that was awesome.
Best game for the opening week for sure.
Yeah, and Thursday night was great too. But yeah, it was a bit of a mixed bag. But you know what? It's fucking football, so I'm not going to complain too much. Before we really get into this podcast, I will let you know that we're going to be recapping Week 1, going over some of the key news items, injuries, who did well, who didn't do well, and kind of taking a top-down view at it. We'll go through some waiver picks. I know a lot of you guys, by the time you listen to this, will have done your waivers already. If that's the case, fucking change your league. Waivers on Thursday morning are way better than waivers on Wednesday morning. I don't know. I've never gotten why they're on Wednesday morning. Do you know?
I think everyone gets a little antsy. I sometimes do, but then I'm usually thankful that we wait till Thursday because, the week shakes out and more news comes out. You can only benefit from doing it later.
Yeah, I don't get why anyone would want to have their waivers go through. You have to make all your decisions on Tuesday night when you're still trying to gather all the information from the past week and, whatever else. So anyway, that's a side tangent, I suppose, more than anything else. We're going to go through some waivers. We're going to go through some questions. But first, Vinny, I want to give a shout out to BenchBoss. If you're a longtime listener, you know them as ViewPick, but they have a brand new name. That being said, they're still the revolutionary app that allows you to play fantasy football live while watching the game on TV. Predict the plays, the results of the play, and literally play fantasy football. You can sign up for the beta now by going to letstalkfantasyfootball.com/benchboss. And I'd also like to remind you guys, please, if you are listening, subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a like on your podcast aggregator, I guess, whatever the case is. If you like us, maybe give us a review. And check out the Let's Talk Fantasy Football apps. They're available for Android and iOS, and they are compatible with your Amazon Echo if you do have one of those. Vinny, what were your sort of like overarching thoughts from Week 1? Obviously, it's just like the weekend-long boner from football. But in general, it seemed like there was a lot of shit that was like weird. I don't know. I didn't expect, at least.
I think that's always the case with Week 1. Like, the bad players usually go off, and then like we had a lot of stud guys that were taken in round 1 or 2 just completely do nothing. Like 90% of like the first round had a bad game, unless you had, like we talked about it, Antonio Brown, probably the only dude in the first round that had a good game, or like a tier 1 game that you expected out of those guys.
First. I mean, Shady had a good game. So did Jordy, but I mean, you're definitely right there.
Yeah, so just a lot of those like studs that did not have good games, so that kind of bummed me out. Just a lot of confusing things, like shit that shouldn't happen, like Nelson Aguilar going off. Like I hate that stuff. Like he's a bad receiver, but he is a fucking thing now. And I guess we should have noticed that Danny Amendola was like going to fill in that void, because that was when I knew the week was going to be weird, because he started going off and like it's the move that made sense was to pick up Amendola. And then he kind of went off, and it just I knew it was going to be bad when he had a good game.
And now he's concussed. But I actually don't know the update on that, but the Rodgers and I actually called the Amendola thing. We said he's going to get outsnapped significantly by Hogan and outproduce him out of the slot. But anyway, that's a little pat on the back for us.
Ooh, I missed that. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, fucking dickhead. No,
I just missed that.
It's cool, man. It happens. Let's get right into the big injuries of the week because, that's going to play a huge role in who you're picking up, who you're not picking up, are those injuries. And obviously, the biggest one, the number one overall pick in most drafts, I would think, David Johnson. He has a wrist injury. He is out 2 to 3 months, Schefter said today. This sucks. Vinny, though, what's your take on where their backfield is going to go from here? Who are the guys that you're looking to maybe pick up? And how does this affect their offense as a whole?
Their offense becomes super bad. Like, it's not even close. David Johnson was the entire offense. And once he left that game, the Cardinals were just complete shit. And they could not get anything done. I mean, they were pretty close to the goal line, so Kerwin Williams snuck in for that touchdown. But really, like, how can you love you can't really love anything about that offense, especially if you're having one piece of their running back by committee going forward. Like, Kerwin Williams is a fine pickup for, like, the immediate short term because they play the Colts coming up. And that's really about it for me. Like, he's the guy that knows the offense right now, was going into the season as the number 2. So he'll get the majority of the carries for, like, maybe the next 1 or 2 or 3 games. And then it's going to be a lot of, like, Andre Ellington coming in. They're going to re-sign Chris Johnson. They brought in a guy from the Patriots practice squad, I believe, or they flew him in for, like, a tryout or something. So it's just going to get really gross because David Johnson is, like, 3 different players in one. So they're going to try and replace that production throughout 3 different dudes. So I really don't know if getting a piece of either of those guys is going to pay off long-term, but short-term for sure, Kerwin Williams is your guy.
Yeah, Williams is going to be a guy that you want to start this week because, as you said, they are playing the Colts, who, as we'll get to later, looked like the worst team to ever play football this past week. But you're right. It's going to be a committee type of thing. They're going to use Ellington. They supposedly are going to re-sign Chris Johnson. We'll see what happens there. And I kind of fooled myself into thinking that maybe last year Carson Palmer just had some bad luck, and that passing offense just maybe had some bad luck. But he came out and he looked washed after an entire year last year of also looking washed. So I think this whole offense, I was relatively high on Larry Fitzgerald, at least for the beginning of the season. I'm further down on him. John Brown, he played a lot of snaps, but I just don't have any faith in this offense at all. Maybe past this week against the Colts. I think the next biggest injury on the board was Allen Robinson early in that game, tore his ACL. He's out for the season. Now, we saw the Jaguars really have success in the run game. So it remains to be seen how much pass volume is going to go around, that sort of thing. But what's your diagnosis or what's your take on the Marquise Lees and the Allen Hurns and maybe even a Julius Thomas, these type of guys in the Jaguars pass game with Robinson down?
Well, Julius Thomas is on the Dolphins, so
I'm a fucking moron. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. A little slip there, but it's cool, Walsh. It's week one.
Jesus, man.
You're all shaken up, man.
Yeah.
But to take the immediate guys that would probably benefit from this, it's when it comes down to like Allen Hurns and Marquise Lee, I'm leaning Allen Hurns, and I think I would prefer to have him season long if you're going to play that game. I just do you remember when they gave him like that shit, like that crazy contract?
He's like one of the highest paid receivers in the league.
Yeah, I think that's going to be motivation for the team, and I guess him to prove it for some reason. I don't know. I'm going narrative there, but that's just because I don't really think there's going to be enough targets to go around to they're not as talented as Allen Robinson at all. So this is like a duct tape fix for your team. But if you're hurt by Allen Robinson, since he was on a lot of teams, obviously, I would lean Allen Hurns as the preferred pickup there.
Okay, that's fair. I think I'd lean toward a guy that I'd like to pick up. Just in the past year or so, he's looked better. But It's difficult to diagnose that Jacksonville offense after week one because they were so dominant against the Texans. Doug Marrone came out and said if he doesn't want to pass the ball at all. He pretty much didn't have to. It remains to be seen whether they can run the ball this dominantly and be this dominant on defense against teams that aren't the Texans, who looked like maybe the second worst team in football this past week. But we'll sort of see there. Either way, the Allen Robinson injury definitely sucks a lot.
Yes.
Let's move on to the third injury here. Danny Woodhead, hamstring. They're saying 4 to 6 weeks, I believe.
Yep.
So this one, I think – sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. This one I think has a much clearer fix to it in that Buck Allen basically took over that pass-catching role. He actually did out-snap Terrence West in their first game, even though it was a blowout. I think it's easy to say Buck Allen is the number 1 or 2 pickup on the waiver wire this week because he likely wasn't owned much, and he's going to take over that Danny Woodhead role. Yeah,
absolutely. And then to add to his value, I think, is they're willing to kind of split West and Buck Allen pretty much. They did have a firm grip over the Bengals pretty hard in that game. So they actually put out about 40 carries between the both of them. So it's a little hard to judge how it's going to go going forward, but I think you're dead on with the passing work, and that should kind of space out throughout the season. So as long as Danny Woodhead is out, Buck Allen will have a ton of value. So I think I agree with you with the number 1 or 2 waiver for sure. I would definitely prefer to have him over Kerwin Williams, actually.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think he's my number 2 behind a guy we'll get to in a little bit. But Buck Allen also, he's not an unknown quantity. We've seen him in weeks where the Ravens have given him volume. We've seen him be a fantasy stud, just based on that volume over the past 2 years. The next guy, Andrew Luck, we kind of have to talk about it. He's already ruled out for week 2. So if you drafted Andrew Luck, fucking start streaming, drop him. You don't need to own Andrew Luck on your bench for however many weeks, particularly because he doesn't have a timetable here. And you would think Jacoby Brissett is going to start. Have they said anything official? Do you know?
For Jacoby
Brissett or Tolzien? Yeah,
I think it's Brissett. I think it has to be.
Tolzien was so bad, dude.
It was terrible, dude. He should have pulled a Bill O'Brien and just fucking yanked his quarterback in the first quarter, dude. Fucking get him out.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. The Colts are going to be bad for the foreseeable future until Luck is back. And then the last injury we're going to get to was Kevin White of the Bears. It's his 3rd straight season with a broken bone. He apparently broke his collarbone. That's a motorcycle. Sorry, I have my window wide open. But anyway, Kevin White broke his collarbone. The Bears are down to nothing in receivers. Is there anyone to pick up in that wide receiver core? You think so? Or you think?
The wide receiver core, I would love to say Kendall Wright, but he was only out there for, I think, less than 50% of their snaps this week. So, that'll go up, I'm sure, but didn't really look like they were willing to make him a big piece of their offense. But, Walsh, I think you're alluding to a bigger pickup at the running back situation that will equal the receiving production there.
Yeah. It's Tarik Cohen is the guy in terms of pickups for the Bears this week. And maybe he's not going to have the production he did this week every week, but he got 13 touches. He's a guy who is going to be out there in passing situations a lot, and the Bears are going to be down a lot this year, so they're going to have to pass the ball. Mike Glennon, I think, gave him 8 targets this week. So 8 targets out of the backfield is nice.
Yeah, he was fucking really good. So I would look to pick him up number 1, like you said. And I was looking at their split, and I think going forward in the season, they're kind of comparable to Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman in the sense that you could play both of those guys every week and expect good production out of both of them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. Jordan Howard is likely a guy that you're playing every week anyway. And Tarik Cohen, until we get further information that maybe he's not going to get the volume that you think, particularly in PPR, 13 touches a game for a guy who's going to get at least 5 targets. That's a at least a flex play every week.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, we're going to move on to our next section here, which we call cool shit and weak shit. So cool shit, man. Kareem Hunt on Thursday. That was some cool shit. He had about 45 PPR points.
Don't I know it? I was on the receiving end of a hunting. Just got dominated on the opener. I'm just like, football sucks. I want it over with now.
The most dangerous game, dude. You were getting hunted.
Yeah, wrecked.
So in terms of this, obviously Kareem Hunt had a huge game, and we can't expect 45 points a week. But is Kareem Hunt legit? Are you comfortable with him as an every week starter?
Oh, absolutely. He showed absolute playmaking talent. It was just I couldn't even believe what I was watching, especially after starting off with a fumble in your first NFL carry. He did not go into the doghouse. They left him out there, showed confidence in him, and he just absolutely tore it up. Really can't say much. Like, that was just wild.
Yeah, it is interesting, and you pointed this out in our group text, I guess, on Friday or whatever. He only did have, I think it was 58% of the snaps. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, that's why I forgot to bring up my own stat.
So he only had about 58% of the snaps. That being said, it seemed like a situation where when he was on the field, they were looking to get him involved, whereas Charkandrick West was kind of more on the field, just on plays where either the running back wasn't targeted or, just pass blocking or whatever else. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. We saw Isaiah Crowell last year be a productive back all year, getting less than 50% of the snaps a lot of the time, just because they were trying to feature him when he was in. So I think that might be the situation with Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, and Hunt only left the game when he was tired, so West is nothing but like there to spell him. It wasn't even like throwing West for some goal line stuff or anything important like that. It was just if Hunt is burnt out, West will get like a few carries. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's move on to the Lions offense, which was definitely some cool shit with the exception of maybe Eric Ebron. But the Lions offense, it's interesting because I guess Arizona's not as good as they were in past years. I thought their secondary was still going to be elite. It didn't appear to be that way. Stafford had 4 touchdowns. That is a good amount. He's definitely streamer territory now, right?
Yeah, I think people might have even drafted him if they were going our style of late QB even. So you were worried at first, like in the first couple quarters, like, oh shit, Matt Stafford's like choking right now. And then they do what they do and they came back and dominated. So Stafford looks really good. The offense got their shit together. I was pretty wrong on Tate. It looks like he's going to compete for most targets this season. That was fucking wild.
Yeah, he ended up with 12 targets, 10 catches out of the slot. Big game for him. And, it seems like he really is going to get a ton of those targets, and we'll see if that changes a little bit, maybe just based on defensive schemes and defensive matchups and whatever else. But at this point, Tate seems like a guy that you got to be running out there, which is not what we necessarily thought. I think that maybe not surprised, but a guy who confirmed a lot of theories that he was worth a flyer was Kenny Golladay. 7 targets, 4 catches, 2 touchdowns, I think about 60 something yards. We said in the offseason, he's a guy who could score a lot of touchdowns. If you're going into next week or going into future weeks, are you like okay relying with Kenny Golladay or relying on Kenny Golladay?
I don't know about relying, but he's probably the epitome of like, I don't want to say boom or bust flex yet, but he's that guy that you're throwing in the flex. And it's like, if he has the potential to get 2 touchdowns, so I'm okay with rolling him out there. And I know they have a tough matchup coming up against the Giants, but that could be another one where Marvin Jones and Golden Tate are tied up in good coverage, and then Golladay is just running out there scoring touchdowns again. So he could be frustrating to own if that is the case. But if you're willing to ride or die on Golladay here, I don't think it's the worst flex play week to week so far.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, he looks like he's going to get those red zone targets, and he's a big physical dude who can go up and get the ball. Outside of him, you had Abdullah who got 18 touches, didn't do shit with it, but I like that 18 touches. You had Riddick with a nice game, and then Ebron basically not involved at all. What's your take on Ebron going forward?
Oh, man, it really bummed me out. Like, I don't even know what to think anymore because I feel like he'll come on eventually, but seeing how everything was spread out and seeing that we thought touchdowns would go to Ebron, and they're pretty much going Galladay's way and Marvin Jones's way. So I don't want to say drop Ebron yet, but get ready to pull that trigger eventually.
Yeah, it's week one. Tight ends are inconsistent week to week, even in target numbers. So I'm not. If I drafted Ebron, I'm sticking with him. But we'll see what happens. Talk to me about some of the late round QBs or streamer types who really did really, really well this week. So I don't know. Go through some of these guys. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, so dude, the one guy that a lot of people are talking about was Bradford, and he absolutely looked fantastic. That offensive line gave him time. To be fair, they did play the Saints, nice matchup, but goddamn did he look good when he got time. And Thielen and Diggs, they are one of the better wide receiver cores, I think, now. They absolutely went off. But it just shows to prove you, like, waiting on quarterback really brings a lot of value to you immediately when you're, like, not playing a guy like who had bad games. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, just top name dudes that you probably spent a really high pick on, and then you get away with guys like Bradford. Tyrod, who we've been calling the whole time, obviously had a great matchup too. Even Bortles came back slinging a little bit. At least he was pretty effective, actually, with, I guess, setting up the run really helped him out a little bit. But just some of those guys that really paid off for you with waiting on quarterback.
Yeah, I would add Carson Wentz into there. He had a nice game against the Redskins, which isn't the easiest matchup. So yeah, it went to show, and it is week one. Obviously, weird things are going to happen, but Bradford in particular. I mean, geez, way outplayed Drew Brees in that game, and part of that is matchup. And we'll see exactly how much of that is matchup, because that's certainly something to stress as well to everyone. After 1 week, it's hard to deduce whether it's a good offense or a bad defense, or vice versa. Like, what is the cause of this? Is it that this defense is good and this offense is bad, or what really is there? So keep that in mind going forward, that we still only have one data point so far this year. But yeah, so far these streamers, these matchup-based guys, looking pretty solid going together. The next guy who we were completely wrong about, but it's definitely cool shit what he did, and we mentioned it a little bit here, but Leonard Fournette, he had 26 carries, 100 yards, 1 touchdown, also had 3 targets, added, I think, 24 yards through the air. So I want to know 2 things here. Is this a product of the game script there where they were ahead the whole time and Houston was playing bad? Or do you think in games where it's tighter or maybe they're even down, they're going to force feed him? They're going to get him the ball that many times anyway. And then I guess as a follow-up to that, how often do you think this game script is going to kind of continue where the Jags are up, the defense is dominating, and they can just pound the ball with Fournette?
Man, I don't know. The Texans looked so bad, and that defense just got to feast on them. So whenever the offense did have the ball, they were running the shit out of it. So with the game script question, man, I don't know how many games the Jaguars are going to be in unless their defense is legit, which it kind of did, but like the Texans were so bad. So I'm leaning towards that the Jaguars defense is definitely much better than it was last year. Hopefully they can keep them in games, and if that's the case, they're going to force feed Fournette constantly. And to the other question that they're going to force feed him, I think that happens regardless. I don't see a reason to take it out of his hands, whether they're winning or not. I think they should give it to, like, who's out there? Chris Ivory. They don't have a pass catching back. Like, they had Yeldon as a healthy scratch, I believe. So they're not really looking to get a pass catching back involved. So put Fournette out there. He's your best player on offense right now, especially with the injury to Allen Robinson. He's going to get fed constantly.
Okay. I'm kind of on the other side of that, where I think Fournette is I think he's a sell high candidate for me. I think while he'll definitely have his games, I don't think this is the normal for him this year. I don't know that the Jags are as good as they looked this past week. So if I'm there, what I'm trying to do is capitalize on whoever picked David Johnson with the first pick and sell them Fournette, depending on my team structure, obviously, and how much I need him. But if I think I can get good value and I don't necessarily need Fournette, I've got other guys there as well, I'm trying to sell high on him.
That's completely fair. Very ballsy, Walsh. Very ballsy.
I also don't own him at all, so like I'm never gonna have the chance to do that.
I just think like you look at what happened with the running backs this week, it's just going to probably be the trend. It's very unpredictable, and if you have a guy who's getting guaranteed like 18 to 20 carries, that I don't think you can trade away. No matter like if the opportunity's there, I think you got to hold on to him. So and that is totally there with Fournette. So I would keep him on my team for sure.
I think that's also a fair take. I mean, it's a lot of volume that he's going to see. Going into not as much volume, but looking pretty well, Marshawn looked like Marshawn. He looked exactly like Marshawn has always looked, which is nice. I don't know if the fantasy production was completely there. He didn't get in the end zone, which again, Rogers and I kind of I outlined my theory that Marshawn was going to get in the end zone last week. He did not do that. They threw the ball to Amari Cooper 3 times from the 2-yard line, and none of them were completions on one drive, which was a little weird because he was not normally their red zone target. But Marshawn looks great, and with the Raiders as a whole looking very, very good against what I think is a pretty good team in the Titans, Marshawn is looking like he's probably going to end up being worth that pick because I think more games than not, you're still going to see that Marshawn touchdown. Yeah,
for sure. I think like the 3rd round price definitely paid off like tenfold already. He looks great. It was the risk that people were willing to take, and it looks like it paid off. And I think once they get into some divisional games, they're going to lean on Marshawn a lot more to slow the game down, especially with what we just saw in the Chargers-Broncos game too. They're going to want to, put games away and shit like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So hold on to Marshawn, be comfortable with him going forward. We talked about it a little bit. You mentioned Thielen and Diggs. We should really talk a little bit more about Minnesota as a whole. So Thielen, obviously, Bradford was great. Thielen, who was overshadowed by Diggs because Diggs had 2 touchdowns, ended up with the most targets. That was 10 targets, 9 catches, 157 yards. That's great efficiency. I think Thielen's legit. I think Thielen has the chance to be a top 20 wide receiver in fantasy this year.
Yeah, they're both going to be top 20 for sure. I was worried about Thielen. I thought he was kind of one of those guys that came on late in the season and then wouldn't really pan out for you this season. So far, I am dead fucking wrong. He is a great wide receiver. Bradford loves him. And, dude, like what round did he go in? I can't even remember now. Like late.
I think I took him in the 9th in one league.
Yeah, 9th, 10th. That's fucking fantastic.
Yeah. And then Diggs as well. I said he got those 2 touchdowns. He had 7 catches on 8 targets, 93 yards in those 2 touchdowns. So he was great as well. While we're at it, I was going to bring him up a little bit later, but since we're talking about the Vikings, let's talk about Dalvin Cook and how apparently wrong we were on him. And, we were very staunch about that he wasn't going to be their bell cow. They were going to use other guys around him. They didn't. They used all Dalvin Cook, basically. 22 carries, 127 yards. He had 3 catches on 5 targets for 10 yards. He didn't get in the end zone, but he didn't really need to. Dalvin Cook looked really, really good. He looked like an all-around back, and I am very willing to admit that if Minnesota continues the way they look right now, which, again, it's the Saints, but Dalvin Cook is going to have a really good year.
Yeah, for sure. Dead wrong, dude. Absolutely. Most of the rookie running backs we always whiff on, and we haven't learned because we're trying to break that trend. But it's just they're fucking good, and I think we need to, or at least I do, need to learn how to evaluate them better. Because holy shit,
we were right on Kareem Hunt
being good.
Yeah.
Well, that also was with like the wear injury too. That kind of helped us out.
Yeah, I guess so.
Let me ask you this, Walsh.
Yes.
Season long, if you had to make a bet right now, who has the better season, Kareem Hunt or Dalvin Cook?
This year, dominate your friends with free play-by-play fantasy football from BenchBoss. BenchBoss is the first play-by-play fantasy football game where you must think like the players and coaches on the field as you predict the outcome of every play. Earn rewards as you compete against friends and fans across the country. BenchBoss is currently recruiting beta testers, and we need you. Visit benchboss.tv to learn more and sign up today.
I'm going to go, like more fantasy points?
Yes. Yeah. Strictly.
I'm gonna say Kareem Hunt, maybe. I don't know. That's tough, man.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I was thinking about it all day. I'm like, I wonder what Walsh is going to say when I pop this on him.
Dude, I'm saying Kareem Hunt, but I think it's just me being biased because we were so down on Cook going into the season that I'm like trying to scrape like one last win out of this. Like, yeah, he's still better than Kareem Hunt. But I mean, it's tough, man.
I'll say I think it's going to be Cook. I think that he'll get more of the share there, and I think that'll just kind of pan out in his favor at times.
Okay. I'm going to go with Hunt, but I don't really have a good reason to.
That's also fine.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're both good.
Fair enough. All right. And then let's move on to the Packers wide receivers. Randall Cobb was productive and pretty good. He didn't take away from Jordy, but Devontae Adams didn't have the game that you wanted. Are you buying Randall Cobb as a guy that you can maybe consider playing week to week?
I'm cautiously optimistic because I do like Randall Cobb. I liked him a lot as a sleeper this year, and this week one feels almost too good to be true. I think the matchup with the Seahawks really paid into this because, they're very susceptible to like the slot receiver and stuff like that, even though Jordy got free on a few plays. So Devontae Adams clearly suffered. I wouldn't panic on him just yet. He'll definitely have his games, but if Randall Cobb is coming back and continuing to get over 30% of the target share like per week, Randall Cobb could be in for another huge year like he was a couple years back, which makes me nervous for a few owners of who did I just – oh, my God, I lost it. Devontae Adams and stuff like that. So be a little worried if you don't own Cobb and be worried if you don't own Cobb.
Yeah, I like it. Let's move on to some weak shit. So we mentioned it a little bit before, but sort of those tier one picks really underperformed. So outside of Antonio Brown, Shady, you look at the rest of the first round, David Johnson obviously got hurt. Le'Veon Bell had the worst game he's had when he's active in years. AJ Green had a terrible game. Odell wasn't active. Mike Evans didn't play. You had all these things sort of going against it. But it was a tough week for some of these early picks, and that really boned a lot of people. I think there were a lot of low scores based on that this week. Are you still comfortable with these guys, going forward?
Yeah, how could you not be? You just got to ride it out. I mean, they're still the best in the league, so just keep it going. I had a question about the Bell thing. Do you think that was like a stick it to Bell thing, or was that just coincidental?
I don't know.
Yeah, I really couldn't tell because they got down to the red zone and they didn't really throw a lot of passes his way. It seemed very odd. Maybe it wasn't him practicing for a long time or not getting in the full week there. I really wasn't sure.
It honestly could have been, knowing that he wasn't there most of the preseason, and maybe not even a stick it to him type of thing, but maybe just we know we can beat the Browns without using you too much, so we're going to ease you into it type of thing, which is, certainly possible. I wouldn't be worried at all about Bell. He's the most dynamic running back in the league. He'll be fine going forward. But, yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know if they would do it like a stick it to him type of thing. Because Tomlin generally with disciplined guy. I mean, when Bell came back from his weed suspension, when Martavis Bryant has come back from stuff, he doesn't really stick it to those guys too much. So I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I own Bell, so I was like, what the hell is going on? It just made me, I was so confused and angry.
Yeah. No,
did not feel right.
Those are the correct emotions for that. The Patriots backfield. So we had Gillislee get 3 touchdowns, which was really a product of pass interference calls in the end zone. Gillislee also got stuffed on 2 4th and shorts, though. So everyone's saying he had this crazy good game. It's I don't know if he really did. He just got in the end zone a bunch. The rest of it seems like a committee. Burkhead got the start, but he only got 3 carries and 3 targets, I believe. James White got a decent amount of work. I think he ended up with 9-point-something PPR points. I started him in one league. Great start. So I guess going forward, and Deion Lewis, I think, had 1 touch. So I guess going forward, the question is, which of these guys are you relying on? And I think Gillislee is going to be the hot start. Is he going to be a guy that you're starting?
Man, no. It's just so like we talked about this in the offseason constantly. Like this is the guy who's going to get touchdowns on your bench. You plug him in, he gets fucking 30 yards maybe, and probably doesn't see the field a whole lot. I like what James White did. I think playing him in the flex is not the best move every week, but if you have to, like you had to week 1 with some of the stuff happening, that's fine. I would not touch any of the other dudes, obviously, but I would hate to get burned by Gillislee constantly all season. I would be looking to trade him to fucking anybody for anything, really. It's not worth the headache, I don't think. Like, what do you think his ceiling is? Like, he's not going to have 3 touchdown games all the time like Blunt because he's not getting used like Blunt. That's just a fact.
I mean, he could end up with 18 touchdowns like Blunt had last year. You never know.
They're not using him like Blunt, though. They just put him in like strictly goal line situations when they were at the 1.
Yeah, I don't know.
For having 3 touchdowns, he had like 22 fantasy points. That is fucking bum shit. Like, he should have had like 40 points. It was so lucky to me. He
has a very, very low floor and a very high ceiling every single week. So you're going to have to keep that in mind. And you're right. If you have running backs where you're making decisions based on matchups every week, and one of those guys is Gillislee, there's a decent chance you're going to fuck it up. They're playing the Saints this week. Like that on paper, that's a good matchup. But if the Saints defense is bad enough that the Pats score from outside the 5 every time they score, then Gillislee is going to give you maybe 4 points next week. So it's difficult. It's definitely difficult. I think Burkhead, you might be able to drop. You certainly should
drop the fuck out of him.
Lewis too, obviously. But Gillislee, and I think White seemed like, to me, White's the guy with the most consistent week to week type of thing, but he doesn't have the ceiling as Gillislee. We already talked about us being wrong about the rookie running back. So let's talk about another one. Alvin Kamara. What the fuck, man?
Sean fucking Payton, dude. Again.
Dude, you're right. Mark Ingram must have fucked Sean Payton's wife. And
it's absolutely what happened.
I don't know what Adrian Peterson did, but Alvin Kamara got 31 out of the Saints' 62 snaps. He led the running backs in carries with 7. The other 2 had 6 each. And he led them in targets with 6. Ingram had 5. What's the fucking deal? I mean, Kamara's, I guess, a guy that you want to pick up. He should be rostered. But, when are you going to play him? When are you going to play the other guys? I don't know what to make of this backfield at all. And I own Ingram in one league. I started him, and I actually – a quick side note, it was pretty funny. So that last drive, you know how, it was just over-the-top coverage the whole time, and they dunked it to Ingram 4 times?
Yes.
And then he didn't touch the ball again the rest of the time?
Mm-hmm.
I went into that drive down 8 points, and I got exactly 8 points and won my matchup based on Ingram getting fucking 4 dump offs in a row. I was like, oh God, that's such a bitch way to win this week.
Something bad is going to happen to you this week.
Yeah.
That is
lucky.
I'm
going to get hit by a car or something because of that.
Jesus
anyway,
Christ. That's so especially for the other guy, I would be so furious.
Oh, dude, I would be so mad. It was the exact right amount of points that I needed, and that was it. But anyway, what do you do with this backfield? How do you feel comfortable with any of them?
I want to stick to Ingram because I do love Ingram. I think he's the best running back on the team. I would panic a lot for Peterson owners. I would be very concerned. They didn't use him. You saw them yelling at each other on the sidelines, them being Peterson and Sean Payton. That was very funny to watch. So it's looking very volatile there. And Peterson, he's going to have to suck it up and kind of play second fiddle to I don't fucking know at this point, but he is not the main back. So definitely different for him. So it's hard to shake out between those two, but Alvin Kamara, I agree, should be rostered, but like you said, when are you going to want to fucking play him? You're going to have to wait for an injury or some kind of crazy falling out and Peterson gets cut or something like that. It's just, I don't see the upside for Kamara season long, and I feel like you can just throw a flyer pick on him and not be too pumped about it for this week.
Yeah, I mean, Kamara led them in carries and targets, like I said, and it was 7 and 6. I don't want to play a guy getting 7 carries and 6 targets unless I know he's good and he's going to be efficient with it, or I'm desperate, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I agree with you on that. Let's go to another puzzling running back situation, and it's only getting more puzzling now with Thomas Rawls coming back. So, of course, I'm talking about the Seahawks. Rogers and I, again, were like, Eddie Lacy is a great play this week because the Packers defense isn't great. And Eddie Lacy saw 14% of the running back snaps. Chris Carson saw 53%. Procise saw 33%. And what's even more puzzling is that in obvious passing situations, Carson was getting snaps above Procise, which you would think Procise would be that passing down guy, if nothing else. So, yeah, with Rawls coming back, what do you think about these guys? Are you dropping Lacy? Are you dropping Procise? Are you adding Carson?
Drop everybody. Want no part of this shit. Nah, just kidding. It is definitely one of the worst backfields in the league compared to the Patriots, I think. What you're going to get week to week is Pete Carroll lying to your face and a mixed bag of snaps, just like we got. Lacy looked bad.
Yeah, Lacy looked really bad.
Do you drop Eddie Lacy? I know a lot of people took him relatively early in drafts. You're a guy that is not afraid to cut bait on most dudes, regardless of where you've taken them. I wanted to know your take on what you thought about Eddie Lacy there.
I'm dropping the shit out of him. I know. I'll drop the shit out of him for Alvin Kamara, dude. I don't give a fuck.
I love it.
Yeah, no, Eddie Lacy is gone from any team that I own him on, which is none. But if he was on any team, he would be totally gone. So yeah. That's pretty much what I got on that.
Let me see. Do you lean Chris Carson at this point, or are you waiting to see Thomas Rawls come back? Because I could see a lot of people picking up Chris Carson this week with him leading like the snap percentage, but once Rawls comes back, it just all goes to square one again to me. So it feels to me like the Kamara dart throw on your waiver this week too. You can do it, but why would you want to?
Yeah, I mean, they're clearly behind some of the other running backs there, the Cohens, the Allens, the Williams, and I'd even throw Shane Vereen in there as a little spoiler of later. But I feel like they're behind those guys in terms of where I'd pick them up. But yeah, I'm fine with, picking up Carson. I don't think it's the worst move you can make because who knows how they're going to use Rawls now. They clearly didn't love Rawls last year. Like they used him, but they didn't love him. And they brought in Lacy knowing that they had Rawls. They drafted Carson knowing that they had Rawls. So yeah, I think Carson's worth a speculative ad at this point.
Yeah, very fair. And then I own some Procise. I'm considering him droppable at this point.
Yeah, not a must drop, but definitely droppable.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's talk about two teams that wildly underachieved, one of them being your Cincinnati Bengals.
I don't want to talk about that.
Funnily enough, this is the Texans and the Bengals. They were both so bad, and now they're the Thursday night game.
Yeah, they were the most atrocious things I've ever seen.
So given that bad offensive line, do you think it's possible still for the rest of the offense to sort of come around, be fantasy relevant, or is this a sign of what's more to come for the year?
I really hope it's not what's to come. I was disgusted. Cedric Oboye is probably the worst offensive lineman I've ever seen in my life. He was just abused. And then they couldn't really get anything. Like the leader for the backfield was Gio Bernard. So no one saw that coming. I don't know if that line is going to be able to hold up all year. I think AJ Green will be fine. He had an okay game. It wasn't too bad. He had 7 catches or
no, not even close, man.
Yeah. He had 70-something yards. He was okay. He salvaged a day. I know that.
Okay.
But besides that, I know we were worried about Eifert. I think he'll be okay. He was out there for pretty much all the snaps. So that was really what I wanted to see how much he was hanging in the game because he's had health issues in the past. So hopefully they get him out there on some stuff. Open up the fucking offense, for God's sakes. Just make this team not suck, please. But, yeah, the offensive line looks awful. Very, very awful. I would be very concerned for any Bengal you own besides AJ Green.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to look at it. And I did just look up their stats here. AJ Green had 10 targets, 5 catches, 74 yards. So You're right. For whatever reason in my head, and like I own him too, so I don't know why I thought this.
Oh, you know what happened? The scores didn't clock in for NFL.com, I think.
Oh,
the Bengals-Ravens game, like it was on a super delay. I think they fixed that Monday morning.
Okay, because, dude, I was like, I remember looking at it and being like, sick. AJ Green had like 2 catches.
No. He scrapped it together, man. He did fine.
Yeah, that's an okay game, and I think that's a sign of what you can expect. And AJ Green will get his touchdowns. They won't get shut out every game. But yeah, yeah, right. Hopefully. I think you're right in that you can't trust anyone in that backfield. It was a fairly even split between the 3 in terms of touches, snaps, and whatever else. You can't start anyone in that backfield. Eifert, he'll get his, but he's very touchdown dependent. And then AJ Green is the guy you can start, and that's about it, man. It's
fucking scary because they look like a great offense coming in. I think when John Ross comes back, maybe they can open things up. But again, it's all on the offensive line. It's very scary, dude.
Yeah, and then the Texans, they were also really, really bad. Tom Savage got benched. Deshaun Watson came in, and they just peppered the shit out of DeAndre Hopkins with targets. He had 16 targets. Yep, get peppered. He had 16 targets. He only had 5 catches, I think.
Yeah, 5 catches on 16 targets.
Yeah,
55 yards. It was rough, but
the amount of targets, though, I mean, that was when Hopkins was on his crazy tear. It was because Hoyer was giving him 10 to 12 targets a game, if not more. So if Hopkins is going to get these kind of targets, and Watson seems locked in on him, then Hopkins, I think, is a very, very safe play at wide receiver from week to week. What do you think about Lamar Miller in this awful, awful offense?
Yeah, I don't like it. And I think I saw that Bill O'Brien, for whatever he's worth, saying that Deontay Foreman is going to start getting more carries. So just like more shit on top of bad shit. They also have a very bad offensive line compared to the Bengals. So that should be a fun Thursday night game. Bad offensive line versus like very good defensive fronts. It's going to be like 3-0.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We'll see.
But anyway, I digress. Lamar Miller is looking demoted to like a hard flex that you might want to consider benching week to week. It's not looking great, dude. I did not like what I saw.
No, I'm the same way. I have troubles starting anyone on either team outside of their number 1 wide receivers. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. We pretty much talked about the Colts, but man, the Colts are really bad. You can't start Frank Gore. Marlon Mack is getting nearly as many snaps. He got the touchdown. T.Y. Hilton and Dante Moncrief, do you have any interest in them until Luck's back?
I think Moncrief rides the bench pretty hard. T.Y. is really hard to sit, but I was advocating sitting him like for this Sunday. Like as long as Luck is out, it's hard to put T.Y. in there and expect a good game.
He's going to get covered by Patrick Peterson this weekend too. So
also that
fucking sucks.
He'll have no catches and 10 targets.
Yeah, pretty much. That's enough for the Colts. Let's talk a little bit about the Falcons. The Falcons won against the Bears. Their offense didn't look like it was hitting on all cylinders. They have Steve Sarkisian as the offensive coordinator. No more Kyle Shanahan. One of the most important takeaways, I thought, was that Devontae Freeman got 14 touches, Tevin Coleman got 12, and that included 4 catches on 6 targets for Coleman. If you're a Freeman owner, are you worried about this split?
Nah, we've seen it get to this like last year too at some point. So I would like to probably at the end of week 4 see what they've done, and that's when like a pattern starts to develop. So I want to see if it's this close every single game. This could have been that they needed like a spark. It was weird that the Bears hung around in this game like virtually the entire time. So maybe they wanted like that Coleman spark real quick, see if he could break a big play. So they threw him in there on kind of equal snaps. I think, Freeman had 34 snaps. Coleman had 22. So Freeman's still out snapping him, out touching him still. So I'm not that worried about Freeman. They're both really talented dudes. And like we've always said, you can play them both week to week.
Okay, that's fair. I'm a little worried about Freeman just because he went so high. But it is what it is at this point. We're in the season. You're looking at guys in terms of start and not start. You're not looking at them anymore in terms of this guy needs to return round one value. It's too big of a hole to dig yourself. So, and then the other Falcon we need to talk about is Austin Hooper, who had 128 yards and a touchdown in this game on two targets. He caught both of those targets. One was 88 yards. The other was 40 yards. And the 88-yard one was a touchdown. So me and you were both huge on Austin Hooper going into the year. He didn't get the targets that we wanted, but he put up the performance. What's your take on the rest of the year for him?
Dude, at first I was very concerned because he didn't have a catch or a look until I want to say, was that the third quarter he got that big play in?
I think it was the third, yeah.
Yeah, so I was pretty nervous, but obviously the 2 targets is very discouraging, but look what he did when he got that. He is, well, I was telling you before the podcast, like more of a playmaker than I absolutely thought. I thought he was going to get a bunch of targets, and that's why he would return value to you in a draft. But he is an absolute monster. He chokeslammed the guy on each of his routes. He caught the ball, choked a dude, and then ran for like 50 yards. It was absolutely insane. So I think they got to get Hooper more involved. When you see a guy do what he was able to do off 2 targets, I think it's worth playing him every week until he really bums you out with like some serious dud weeks. So I think as long as they look his way, I think you're totally fine, especially in the tight end spot. Can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, tight end's, tough to get going week to week anyway. When you have an athlete of Hooper's quality or, a playmaker of his quality, I agree with you. You got to keep playing them at least for now. That's going to do it for our week shit. Let's get into our waiver ads of the week. I'm just going to run down the running backs and then we can talk about them as we go. And these are sort of my order for the running backs. Tarik Cohen first. We talked about that before. Buck Allen, Kerwin Williams. I have Shane Vereen after that. And then I have Chris Ivory as your 5th running back pickup. The first 3 I feel like we covered pretty well. Shane Vereen, I just have in there because he outsnapped Paul Perkins pretty significantly. And I don't think the Giants are that good. I mean, I know Odell Beckham's going to come back, but I don't know that the Giants are a spectacular team, particularly offensively. And Shane Vereen's a pass-catching running back. I think he should be owned in PPR leagues. Chris Ivory I put in there because I'm skeptical that Fournette will hold up under that workload. Ivory, I believe, got 10 touches in this game.
Yes.
And that's not bad. I know there was no TJ Yeldon in this, but Doug Marrone says he wants to run the ball. Chris Ivory is a guy who can run the ball. I think Ivory is a guy that you can stash on a bench and kind of see maybe week to week he might have some value. More likely it's just if Fournette gets hurt. But I don't think it's the worst idea if you're a Fournette owner. If you're playing in a deep league and, you're not picking up a guy like Cohen or that sort of thing, to just stash Ivory and see if he gets any value at some point during the year.
Yeah, that's very fair. I think if you're like you said, out of the main waiver section, which is probably like the bottom 5 of your league for this week. So, yeah, that's a good ad.
Talk to me about the wide receivers that we have listed here.
So if he wasn't drafted as a late-round flyer by anybody, he probably was, but if he's not, pick him up immediately. Kenny Golladay for sure. He is probably going to take a lot of the red zone targets. We talked a lot about him before. We have the guy who I talk shit about probably in the first 2 minutes of the podcast, Nelson Aguilar, who is a very bad receiver who is getting a lot of targets working out of the slot for the Eagles. So it's, banking on his week 1 production, he's going to draw a lot of looks from people on the waivers. So you could throw out a flyer, see if, I think the matchup really helped him too this week. But if they're playing in the NFC East, which has a lot of good corners, so there could potentially be Alshon Jeffrey on lockdown most weeks, and then they got to look Aguilar's way. So it's not the worst flyer waiver. I wouldn't really go out of my way, though, to get Nelson Aguilar.
Okay.
And Marquise Lee, which you talked about before, who is your pick for the Jaguars takeover there, and I picked Allen Hurns, so you could pretty much put them in the same bucket, and it's preference at your leisure there. Take who you want. And then Paul Richardson, who Pete Carroll is a liar, but said he's going to work into that number 2 role more than Tyler Lockett. So let's see how that pans out, Pete.
Yeah, you are right. Pete Carroll is a liar and an asshole, and I hate him.
But again, Richardson had some sweet catches. Again.
Oh yeah, and I mean, like, this is a guy who's insane in the Super Bowl the one year. Like, Richardson has shown he can do some things in the NFL when given the opportunity. I think Russell Wilson is going to be better than he's shown in the past couple of weeks. And Richardson actually tied Jimmy Graham for lead in targets this week on that team. He had 7 targets. Doug Baldwin only had 4. So goes to show what the fuck I know, because I love Doug Baldwin. But anyway, that I think that does it for our wide receivers. And then I'll let you go through the tight ends as well. Lead me through it.
Yeah, so we got the tight end roulette rolling for week 2, and right away is a guy Matt liked and had a great matchup against the Jets, was Charles Clay. Pick him up. They play the Raiders? Oh, shit. Wait, I'm talking about the Bills. I'm fucking dumb. They play the Panthers next week. But Charles Clay is a good pickup. If he's going to be the preferred target of Tyrod, go out there and snag Charles Clay. Like, if you had like Hunter Henry or something, I think you're safe to drop him.
Yeah, dude, don't hold on to Hunter Henry, please.
Yes, we didn't talk about that, but holy shit, did the Chargers just fuck everybody with that tight end split, which we warned people about, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I said from the beginning, don't draft Hunter Henry, but anyway.
Yes, it was a bad pick. But, pick up Charles Clay. Jared Cook is a guy that I had, your Raiders. I like Jared Cook. He got, I think, 5 or 6 targets this week. They are playing the Jets, which is why I confused what Charles Clay did against them last week while I was talking about Charles Clay. So Jared Cook's going up against the Jets. That's fucking sweet, possibly sneaking in a touchdown there. And then if Austin Hooper is not owned in your league, we talked about him before. Huge playmaker, just needs to get the targets down. Worth playing in your tight end spot if you want to do that, because he is a good guy.
Yeah, I agree with you on those. All right, and now we've got a couple listener questions to close out the show. So let's get into them. First question here. And actually, you know what? I'm going to preface these. So we're going to answer these. A lot of them are who should I play this week type of questions. I will say this. If you guys are asking us questions, we're going to give you much more accurate answers about who to play later in the week. So I think earlier in the week, it's easier for us to answer general questions or the waiver questions, basically. We're going to try our best here, but I don't decide who I'm going to play in my lineup until like Saturday, most weeks. So keep that in mind as we're going through these. So first question here. Should I play Buck Allen, Tarik Cohen, or Kendall Wright in the flex in my PPR league this week? Vinny, who are you going with?
For context, Walsh, I don't know if you have it out in front of you, but the Bears are playing the Bucks and the Ravens are playing the Browns. So I'm going to go with Cohen here. I'm going to ride that week 1 and see what happens, because I don't know. The Browns defense kind of held the Steelers in check for the most part outside of Brown. So maybe their defense is a little better than we think, and I'd prefer to roll the dice on Cohen for like a huge week instead.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Cohen as well. They're big underdogs against the Bucks, so I could see him getting used a lot as well. Next question. This is non-PPR, so standard, I guess. And we want to know if we're going Gillislee or Hopkins this week.
I'm going to go Hopkins here. I just think he'll get a ton of targets his way. It sucks because he's on Thursday against the Bengals. Pac-Man Jones is back. But when you're having Deshaun Watson just chuck balls at you, I think Hopkins will do something eventually. So I think that's better to bank on than fucking 3 touchdowns or nothing from Gillislee.
Yeah, I think Hopkins is the much safer option. I'll say that. I think, again, but I don't even know if Gillislee has the higher ceiling. Because if Hopkins if he catches 10 of his 14 targets and like 2 of them are touchdowns or whatever, like, yeah, I think it's Hopkins all the way, even in that non-PPR league. So,
like I said before, Gillislee had 3 touchdowns and 22 points. Hopkins could have 2 touchdowns and like 34 points.
Yeah, and we very well may get burned on that, but
very true.
That's what we're going with. There's a high chance, a higher than normal chance we get burned on that pick. But Next one, which is really ugly. JJ Nelson or Dante Moncrief, who has the better week 2? I will say to this one that you should play neither of them. If that's what you're asking about, you should try and pick up maybe one of those guys that we said before, like Paul Richardson or someone. I don't know. If you're asking straight up who has the better week 2, I think it's JJ Nelson because they're going against each other. The Colts are playing the Cardinals. So I'm going to go with JJ Nelson against the absolutely horrific Colts defense.
Yeah, I would do the same thing and just bank on a touchdown. I'm not playing Moncrief at all.
No.
Thanks.
All right. And then our last question here, and this one I think is very, very interesting. Who would win this trade? Ty Montgomery and AJ Green for Kareem Hunt. What do you think?
This is easy for me. I think the Ty Montgomery, AJ Green wins by a mile.
I do too.
Yeah. Just because the Kareem Hunt guy is selling him at like probably the best game Hunt is going to have all season for an elite wide receiver and a running back who is in a very dynamic offense and just had a fucking great game against the Seahawks. So Ty Montgomery, AJ Green wins. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I said it was interesting because it's such a sell high on Kareem Hunt, and I think it's such a buy low on AJ Green. So yeah, it's if you're on the Ty Montgomery and AJ Green side of that trade, do not trade those two away for Kareem Hunt. It's not worth it. And that's not to say that we don't think Kareem Hunt's going to have a good year. We do, but those are two very, very good players.
Most definitely.
All right, man. I think that's gonna wrap us up for tonight. So keep an eye out for the preview podcast that'll be coming over the next couple of days. I believe we're gonna have Don and Shrek on that one, so that'll be a fun one, a nice informative one, as Don is always so informative. Guys, just keep an eye out for that. Make sure you are subscribing on iTunes. If you do keep listening, it gets sent right to your feed. And then keep an eye out for the LTFF apps as well. Make sure you're downloading those. They're pretty useful, I think. Vinny, you got anything else for this week?
Real quick, maybe two guys we missed for waivers. Real quick, wide receivers. Yeah. Two guys, Travis Benjamin and Jermaine Kearse. Okay, yeah, that's fair. Kearse seemed to really get the majority of the targets from McCown this week, and then Travis Benjamin caught that bomb from Phillip in the fourth quarter. That was so Phillip slings, dude.
Yeah, love watching Phillip sling the pig for sure. But yeah, that's a good call on Travis Benjamin and Jermaine Kearse. Definitely, if you're in the market for receivers, keep those two guys in mind. Any other tidbits we want to throw in? That is it, man. I hope everyone. You know what? Fuck it. I want to throw one more in too. Cooper Kupp. Yes. Yes, Cooper Kupp, if he wasn't drafted. Yeah. He might have been drafted in your league, but yes. Yeah. He's in the same boat as Kenny Galladay. Yeah, exactly. All right. Go ahead. What were you going to say? I was just going to say, for us rudely interrupted, I hope everyone had a nice week 1. Get ready for week 2. It's going to get a whole lot more confusing. Just hang in there, guys. We'll get through this. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's going to get way more confusing. So for Vinny, I am Walsh. Later, podcast. This has been Let's Talk Fantasy Football. Thanks for listening.